highways have been diverted in Ireland to make way for a hawthorn tree that is known to
Mm.
be the portal tree, where no one would cut it down because it was said it could incite instant death if someone was to actually cut it. So literally diverting a highway to go around it. And that's why also in many of the Celtic lands, you'll see a solitary tree in the farmlands.
Welcome to the Wild Herbs Podcast, where we unpack and uncover the healing properties of wild herbs so you can heal naturally with the plants beneath your feet. I am your host, April Punsalan, wild untamed plant lady, also a botanist, an ethnobotanist, and herbalist dedicated to teaching you how to heal with plants. If you want to learn edible and medicinal plants, you are in the right place, my friend. So I'm super excited today because you get to hear from Kate Murphy. Kate Murphy is an ordained priestess, and she is going to teach you how to connect with the divine feminine within, and especially during this abundant season, the Beltane season. So thank you so much, Kate, for coming on the Wild Herb Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, April. It's an honor to be here, and I'm excited for our chat today.
Me too. So, a little bit before we get started, Kate Murphy is the founder of the Feminine Code, and Kate teaches women how to create a life that is sacred, sovereign, and ceremonious, which I love those three words: sacred, sovereign, and ceremonious. And so there were so many things that I wanted to ask you. And when I think I first saw your work on Instagram and this beautiful just scene of you connecting with nature, and I could feel this energy from you, and I could feel this authenticity and this desire and longing to bring women back to their power, to their source, the divine feminine. And and I loved how you feel you're empowered enough to be like, yes, I am a priestess, which I think some women have a hard time saying, or I'm a medicine woman, or, the claiming that energy. And so can you tell, because you're an ordained priestess, can you tell the listeners what is a priestess?
Such a good question because so many will give you such different answers. And when I think about the word priestess, I really feel about what it is to walk the path of priestess, to explain what it is. And truly, when I feel into walking the path of the priestess, it's very much about how to be in service to that which is love, and love being very and deeply connected to nature. And the priestess as a path is also about holding spaces for that to happen, whether it be through ceremony or ritual or creating containers of healing spaces. The priestess is, in some ways, the holder of that frequency to help people find their way within it. And
Mm,
so if you look at the etymology of the word, it's really about teaching, elder, as kind of the root of priest, priestess. And so in some ways, it's also teacher. And I feel that many fall into that category of serving from this place of love and holding containers and teaching. And so at the same time, too, I feel this other side of humbleness of always learning at the same time
mm.
and being a forever student. And I feel that's also equally part of this path, is that you're always deepening and spiraling in further in to really learn what it is to walk a path of love, because it's actually not so easy all the time.
Right, definitely. I love that being a priestess focused on love and spiraling inward and connecting. And when did you realize that you were a priestess? And it's kind of a two-part question. When you realized that you were a priestess and you started to honor it and you started to do these rituals and ceremonies, how has your life changed? Like, when
Mm,
did you realize you were a priestess? And then when did you, let that energy really embrace that energy? And how did it shift your world?
mm. I think I realized very young, very, very young. like many women and girls that have been, close to nature as a young child, I feel like that's the time where you realize the magic that is there. And
Mm.
oftentimes there's this departing from that experience and then a reconnection. It's almost like an initiatory rite in our lives where we know it to be true, but there's a separation because of societal situations and experiences. And then there's a reconnection. And so, to answer the question in short, I knew from a very young age and was doing ritual and magic and very interested in the esoteric realm and how to do ceremony. But there was also this experience of living in a religious household that, didn't really open up to the idea that the divine feminine was something to be explored or expressed, but rather there was this other path that was wholly and fully contained as the truth. And so I found the word priestess in my early 20s and had something rang through me. And it was just, I need to know more. This path,
Mm.
what is this priestess? I need to know more. And it was like a remembrance happened at that time. And so in those early days of my early 20s, I again started revisiting what it was to connect outside and inside, outside in nature and inside in myself, to open up to the divine in that way again. And starting to do ritual more consciously started to really shift my life in big ways. I was walking a very traditional path and doing the priestess work on the side quietly. And at a certain point, it got to a point where that was no longer possible, that it had to come to the forefront, that this was my work in the world. And that happened in my late 20s, early 30s, and then completely shifted about 5 years ago, where I finally came out and claimed, as you said, that word. I'm not crazy about titles and labels, but I
Mhm.
feel reclaiming that word was also a part of my own healing path. And I would say when that happened, everything changed. To answer the second
Mm.
part of the question, it was
Yeah.
like an embodiment of truth. And yeah, I wouldn't change it, but it's been an interesting and difficult walk too, coming into that, because as you said, there are connotations around these words: medicine woman, witch, priestess, healer. There's so many ideas around what it means. And so the reclamation was part of the healing as well.
That's powerful. That's so true. And I'm really glad that you honored that and that you stepped completely into that light and that love and didn't let, society or, but, I feel like it's the way that we think about society. Society doesn't stop us, but we've just been programmed in a way to kind of hide it.
Yeah.
And especially for those of us who've grown up in the Christian or like in a religious home, it's a gift that you're a priestess and not to and those of you listening, you're likely medicine women or a priestess, and not honoring it is doing us all a disservice, you know? It's doing us all a disservice. It's I think as every woman steps in to her light and her gifts, then it empowers the woman next to her to step in.
It's so true. And I'm sure you noticed that when you fully stepped in, it was like the world opened. People found you, your community grew. It just organically became, because the energy was in such alignment that it couldn't be any other way.
Yes, it's so true.
Mhm.
It's almost like someone's guiding you, like someone's holding your hand and it's like, "Oh, I had you all along." You didn't have to take so long. You
It's
could have
about
did that a long
time.
exactly, that's how it felt. It was a little bit like we had you all along, but, it was scary. Everyone's like, "You're gonna leave the federal government, that beautiful benefits and retirement and all the things," and yes.
Are you crazy?
Yeah, are you crazy? But I would just visualize, I would visualize myself sitting in that office at 63, writing 5-year reviews And I was like, no, that's not what I'm going to do. Like, I already know that. And so there's no reason. But I am going to go back, I think, and volunteer. Like,
Yeah, and share what you've been doing now as well in a new way, in a new form, and open up others' eyes as well to the work you're doing in the world now. I think it's
yeah.
amazing to be able to do that and go back into, the other world, so to speak, and then bring that wisdom in. And I think it can incite such creativity and excitement about the path of healing in all ways.
Yes, yes, definitely. And
Mm.
so you have this entrepreneurial spirit, which I definitely resonate with. And my mom started her own business, and you've had this ability at a really young age. At the age of 12, you started selling candles. And now you have the feminine code and your own business. And can you tell I took a deep dive before interviewing you, and it was such a wonderful dive. And you talk about this journey in your entrepreneurial world and how the divine feminine was missing. So maybe you
Mm.
could tell us a little bit about the energy of being an entrepreneur and how you noticed the divine feminine was missing and how that led you to create the feminine code.
Mm. Oh,
I know
it's
that's a big question.
it's a great question. I want to keep it as concise as possible. I'm traditionally trained in business with business degrees, a couple of them, and have started up a few companies. As you mentioned, the first experience of which was when I was 12 doing candles. And then as I hit my early 20s, I also co-founded my first, I guess you could say, official business. And then through that, several others, as well as getting into management positions and helping startups get into scale up, eventually landing me in the most masculine dominated industry, which was chess and tech. And in that role, I was co-founder and CEO for 8 years. And it was a crash course in the real workings of the business world today, like how to fundraise, how to scale, how to, create partnerships, how to really build out a business that eventually went public when I exited. And that experience was so illuminating in the sense that there wasn't a lot of room for anything other than the masculine values within the system. And I ultimately hit a burnout, midway through my tenure as CEO. And on normal occasions, you would likely step out. But I had this awakening at the same time because I had been walking this priestess path. And I just said, why am I keeping them so separate? How is this possible that I'm not bringing them into union? And so it started with something as simple as cycle syncing within the business to try and get my
Mm.
energy physically back. And that opened up to starting to teach meditation and yoga to my team, who were 80% male in that container. And that also opened up a new experience for how to lead a company that had more of an attention on the wholeness of the beings there, as opposed to work, 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 go home, come back, but rather
Mm.
bringing in this more open container. And then that led to speaking more truth, showing up in board meetings in more feminine attire instead of business suits. It was everything. It was the superficial and the depth. And eventually it got to a point where my values were not being held in the way that I needed them to be held in my work in the world. And so that is what evolved eventually into creating my first iteration of the feminine code, which was the business school of teaching how to weave the feminine and nature and the cycles, not just of our own cycles, but the actual seasonal cycles and lunar cycles into our work and how we can create. And so that came through very strongly in 2019. And at the same time, I was still running the tech firm. I started developing this, knowing I was going to be exiting and creating something that I felt was so much more in alignment with where I was headed. And so that's kind of how it came to be in a as concise as I can be.
You did so good. I'm really impressed. So you have an amazing, you have amazing free offerings on your website, and I'll definitely put links to them in the show notes. And you have one that is the cycles. At the business, and I need to print it out because I couldn't really dive deep into it, and I feel like until I print it out. The wheel of the year I was able to online, but I feel like the other one I need to print. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I mean, I don't want you to feel like you have to go in depth, but it looked really interesting, and I did watch like a little, I don't know if it was a YouTube video, but where you talk about how we can't expect our businesses to constantly be growing on the up, right? Or anything that we're doing in life, right? And that there needs to be cycles. And so can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the foundation of when we're starting or building a business, or even if you have a creative endeavor that you're doing, and parenting and anything under the sun that involves creation is going to follow this life cycle of there is a birth, a growth phase, a maturation phase, and a descent, and eventually some form of a death and a rebirth. And, we see this in every area of nature, including our lunar phases, our menstrual phases, the seasons. There's always going to be a rise, a maturation, and a descent. And when we look at and reflect this onto our creations, our businesses, it can get more comfortable with allowing things to have seasons of depletion or closing. Sometimes we need to end things for something new to open up. And this understanding almost gives us more bravery to allow endings to actually be fruitful in that they have new beginnings on the other side.
Mm.
So in the masculine business paradigm, it's always about grow, 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 push, push, push,
Mhm.
and very rarely about let's take this away now, instead of hanging on and pushing it to see and make it go. But rather in the feminine, it's an understanding of this isn't resonating, so we're going to allow this to decompose and create fertile soil for the next product, service, offering to emerge. And so when we look at it like that, it can actually get more comfortable when there's a quote failure, because ultimately it's actually just a redirection to the new beginning that's about to occur. Although sometimes it can be painful and hard on the ego.
Thank you. That's wisdom. Right now, talking about seasons, we're in Beltane, which is so hard to be inside during this season, the beginning of May. And so for those of you listening, it's the month of May, and as I was mentioning, Kate has a wonderful, which I highly recommend downloading, the Wheel of the Year, which I'll put a link to. And you mentioned in the Wheel of the Year that Beltane is a time when the veil between the worlds grows thin, allowing us to connect deeply with the spirits. And I have felt like I need to be outside so much right now, that there's this magic going on that I don't want to miss an ounce of it. And when I read that, I was like, that's interesting, because I feel that like my meditation feels even better outside right now. Everything just feels so good. And there's a lot of energy. And so I would love to hear about your connection with Beltane, and if you could share with the listeners and with me how we can connect more with this season.
Mm. I'm also a Taurus, so this season is my favorite.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Beltane, when you look at it from the old Irish Beltane, it's actually the entire month. And so while we often celebrate May Day on May 1st or Beltane on May 1st, it's the whole month, it's the whole season. And the beauty of Beltane is all about the fertilization, the coming together, the bee coming to the flower,
Mm.
the the fertilization of the egg. It's the third of the three fertility festivals, the first of which, Imbolc, where the energy starts to rise. And then the second at Ostara, the egg is formed. And the third at Beltane, the egg is fertilized. And so it's this
Mhm.
celebratory feeling that you are sensing of the union coming back, and the flowers and the blossoms coming forward and beautifying with their Venusian energy all around us in the Northern Hemisphere at this time, which is so incredibly magical. And yes, the veil being thin. And it's said that during Beltane, the veil is most thin between us and the fairy or the good folk.
Mm.
And at Samhain, the veil being most thin between us and our ancestors in these cross quarter days that are opposite to each other. But the cross quarter is really the midpoint in between. And that's why it's said the veil is thin, because we're right in the in between. And that's the magical point, is being in between the solstice and the equinox, really in the
Mhm.
midpoint. And so during this time, some of my favorite things are starting to work with the live blossoms again, creating flower essences, weaving flower crowns, doing magical things that also invite play and pleasure into our lives.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, and it's so important, because after what is a slower season, and then we almost have this like reawakening in the early spring, and now it's just, let's enjoy, let's remind ourselves that healing also happens through play and joy and pleasure.
Mm, I like that, play and joy and pleasure. Yeah, I reflecting on my life, I'm like, "Ah, there's not enough play." I was so focused on teaching and doing this and doing that. I'm like, "Wait, I have to play and have fun." But when I am going outside right now, I am just blown away by the energy that is going on, and every day there's so much change. So I've been thinking like I will have to be very wise and next year have a sabbatical of like a week or 2 weeks, because I really just don't wanna be doing anything for at least a week in this and during this time. Like right now, actually, like maybe from May 1st to May 8th. Um, so anyway, and you mentioned elderflower, which really of just it made me so happy because I've been seeing so much elderflower, and I've seen these huge populations flowering right now, and there's a part of me that really wants to carve out time and spend time connecting with her. And so I would love to hear how your relationship with elderflower.
Mm. This is why she's so connected to this season, because of that prolific bloom that she gives at this time. And her energy, from an etheric standpoint, is very connected to fertility and new beginnings and rebirth. And so working with her blossoms at this time energetically is very much in alignment with these energies, and fertility across anything you're creating, of course, not just necessarily life,
Mm,
but your creative work in the world. Maybe you feel inspired to write a book or create and start a new project or art expression or experience or a business, and working with that energy, whether you're taking her in tincture form or flower essence, or having a little posy on your desk, you're really working with the energetic of this plant. And I feel that also there's that protection piece too with
mhm.
elderflower, and the
Yeah.
energy of protection at the same time, coming from a very soft and feminine loving place, as opposed to like the thorns. It's more about holding this energetic container of kind of like a motherly energy, that the protection of the mother feeling. And so I also love for this season, while there's all this love and play being experienced, there's also this energy of soft protection around that comes from this beautiful plant. And so that's how I feel most connected to her at this time, at this season.
I love
And
that. You did your priestess training in Norway, is that right?
a little bit all over the world.
A little bit over all over the world?
Yeah, many pilgrimages. One of my main teachers is in the UK. I've, been spending time in Ireland, Scotland, Egypt, south of France,
Mm.
Glastonbury, as like main hubs, but also venturing down to places like Sardinia. And there's places on my list also to go, to deepen. I think it's an ever evolving. But yes, in the Nordics is where I was seeded when I was doing most of my training. Yeah.
Nice. And so is there this understanding and knowing and appreciation for fairies more, like in the Celtic world?
Certainly in Ireland and Scotland, there is a lot of energy being focused on the good folk and that
The
realm. And
gold
you
folk.
see like highways have been diverted in Ireland to make way for a hawthorn tree that is known to
Mm.
be the portal tree, where no one would cut it down because it was said it could incite instant death if someone was to actually cut it. So literally diverting a highway to go around it. And that's why also in many of the Celtic lands, you'll see a solitary tree in the farmlands just left there because no one dared to cut down these sacred trees that were considered to be homes of the fairy or the fae. But in the Nordics, there's, of course, like in Norway, where I was living, a strong connection to the trolls and to other gnomes and fairy too, but with different names often. And certainly around different holidays, we see different emanations of them coming out. Like Santa Claus, for instance, is actually an elf type of figure that lives in the woods and eats oatmeal with his reindeer. And there's a very beautiful connection there to the other realm or the other world in these areas of the world.
And so do you think that the fairies, because I feel like here in the Western world, right, you go and there's these, fairy statues and people think of fairies and we see like in certain movies little orbs of light. Um, are fairies, I would love to hear what are fairies from you. I feel
I
like you
love
have
the
a
turn.
very good I feel like you have a very good understanding of what is a fairy from a priestess.
What a great question. Okay, so the first thing about fairies that I understand and feel to be true is they don't like being called fairies. They like to be
Mm,
called the good folk.
the
And
good folk. I
yeah,
like
or
it.
something that really recognizes them as strong individuals that maybe we don't perceive as obviously, but really are not to be messed with. They are tricky and mischievous, but also can guide us and help us, and also take us into portals and help us get lost in order to find our way, if you know what I'm saying, like take us on a different journey so that we have the learning that we need to have. I also feel that there's, this whole other world that we can sense, but not necessarily always see with the naked eye. Although
Mhm.
I do think that when you see those orbs coming from, your side vision, that it is in connection to this realm and that they are all over the world and just called different things. And I'm sure when you're out
Mm.
in the field, you feel that this area is definitely connected to another dimension happening here. And I would say in many ways, it's important to respect that boundary and acknowledge it when you're in that space where you can feel that you're crossing a threshold or in a portal, and being mindful that when you do cross, it could take you on an adventure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so do you do rituals to pay homage to the good folk?
I like to leave offerings when I'm in nature, wherever I'm journeying, I often will leave little treasures along the way and creating altars where it's appropriate. My partner and I, we just bought a 13-acre farm that we're moving to this summer, and I'm looking forward to creating places on the land that feel like an offering place or an altar
Mm.
that can be built and created. Um, and so yes, I do. And I would also say that I've spent time in certain stone circles and caves that feel very connected to the other world, and doing some ceremony there and ritual there has always been very, very magical, especially when doing it with a friend or a sister that is open to experiencing it as well. It can create quite a portal of and a journey too.
We have this women's group, and one of the teachers, Lale, leads us on journeys, and um, she led us on a journey not too long ago, and she was like, pick where you want to travel, because we were traveling to the underworld. And I picked the 2 live oaks in the backyard, but sometimes it's always a juniper tree, which is a very resilient tree, very sacred tree to so many cultures around the world. And so I find it really interesting. Of course, when you're doing it, you don't want to think or overthink, because that can mess it up. But I'm surprised that it is always that tree. A lot of times, it just ends up being the juniper. And
Wow.
so who knows, maybe the good folk hang out around that.
Absolutely. And the fact you gravitate to the oak is very telling as well, because the oak has always been considered the gateway to the other world.
I teach this one fern called resurrection fern, and I have this book behind me, and it is from Europe, and there's the fern. It's the same species, right? It's the same genus, Paleopeltis. And the ones that grow on the oak are sacred. And the Druids really love them, and they collect them with so much reverence. And there's this sacredness because they're on the oak. And so this resurrection fern that grows here only grows on the live oaks. And so it's
Wow.
really neat, yeah, to just witness it. And there is this magic between the two, between the fern and the oaks. But
It's like the mistletoe that
yeah.
grows only on the oak. It's considered it encapsulates the other world. So they probably harvest it very similar. The Druids, when they cut it and they make sure they catch it before it hits the ground. I wonder if they do that same with the fern. So it
Mm.
maintains the essence of the other world without it ever touching the ground of this world.
I did research on mistletoe, and it's anti-cancer, and it's this amazing medicinal plant.
Wow.
Yeah, and they use it homeopathically, and there's all this research that's done on it. And my mom gave me a big piece. It was like 2 years ago, and I have some.
So magical. It's the mistletoe and the holly in the winter that have the red berries and the white berries. And it's also considered this divine union of the masculine and feminine, which I love as well. When you start like looking at what lives at that time of the year, the everlasting plants, it's just, yeah, really, really beautiful.
It was really cool. And to think that mistletoe survived so much suppression, oppression, all the things, the burning of the witches, all the things. It was able to survive. I think says volumes about the plant. Really.
Magic.
So thinking about magic, I read in the Wheel of the Year that you do a rosemary hand washing, and that was something I think you recommended for Beltane, I believe. And rosemary, I feel like so many people grow rosemary around the world, and they have a connection with it. Can you tell the listeners about the rosemary hand washing ritual and maybe lead us through one so we could all do it afterwards?
Oh, beautiful. Yes, absolutely. So the rosemary hand wash is really a purification ritual. And I think I put it around the waning moon phase, but you could do it at any time because the energy of rosemary is just so abundant and beautiful. And the energy of purification with rosemary, it's about creating a container that is clear rather than, cleansing and getting rid of. And that's one thing I love about rosemary is it feels very integrating rather than throwing anything away, any of our teachings. It holds on to the wisdom of them while helping us purify any energetic resonance that, is maybe more difficult to hang on to. And so the ritual of the hand washing is really just to take fresh rosemary. And when doing that, of course, honoring the plant that you're taking it from, maybe giving an offering to the plant itself, maybe some fresh spring water and giving thanks. And then when you bring it into your home or wherever you're able to boil water, just taking some fresh water over it. And if you can get spring, great, or well or fresh water, wonderful. And if not, tap is just as magical. And then boiling it till it turns into a fragrant infusion. And then letting it cool and still and straining it into a bowl. And then with that rosemary water, really ritually washing your hands energetically with that water to feel your auric field around your hands, which are very much the link to your heart. The hands are the expression of the heart in the body. They're directly linked through the arms. And so when we're washing our hands, we're also washing our heart. And so we ceremoniously do this washing with feeling the energy of rosemary purifying and softening anything that feels a little bit stuck on the heart. And then
Mm.
when you feel complete, you might want to throw the water into your bath or offer it somewhere in nature as another offering for another plant to receive. Of course, and also offering the rosemary as well that you used for the boiling, always giving back the plant to somewhere else that could use it. So it's never being thrown away again. It's being, created into new fertile soil somewhere else. And you can also pour it over your head because rosemary is great for hair growth. Or bathe your feet as well. Many different ways. There's no wrong way. It's just about having reverence whenever you're doing a ritual and then closing your container and giving thanks. And I think it's a beautiful one to do, especially when the moon wanes, because you're at this point of going into the descent before the rebirth. So it's almost like just preparing for rebirth in a way. Yeah.
I definitely am gonna give it a try. And I love rosemary. I feel like it is so cleansing and protecting. Actually, just this morning, I did a rosemary steam facial because I am fighting a sinus infection right now. I did the steam with rosemary and juniper. And when I was going to pour the water on the plants outside, by my front porch, I was like, "Let me see how much medicine is still in the rosemary," because she probably could be boiled again. So I ate a leaf and there was still so much medicine. And I was like, "Wow," that infusion only a little bit. And I have it in a mason jar sitting on the counter right now because I really want to take a bath and pour it over my head. And I love the reverence that you have for rosemary, and I love the ritual, just it's a great way to connect with the plant, with the reverence, and you explained it beautifully, and then washing your hands and your heart clean of that what no longer serves you.
Mm.
So thank you for sharing that.
And
And
thank you for the rosemary infusion for breathing it, because I'm also have a sinus thing happening right now. So I'm gonna go do that right after this call.
I think it's so important. Like, you have to do it 3 times a day, and I feel a little bit like the mechanic that doesn't take care of his cars. You know what I mean? Because I've only done it once, and then I did it yesterday once, but I know it really takes when you have a sinus infection, it really takes 3 times a day, like
Mm.
morning, lunch, and then, dinner. Or anytime, but just 3 when I do it when this has happened to me in the past, if I do it 3 times a day, it will go away fast. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with the world and with the listeners. There are so many beautiful women out there that really need to hear your message and step fully into their power because, we know that the sacred feminine definitely is returning. And it's happening more and more every day, every minute, and the more women that step into their power, the stronger that feeling, that change is gonna happen. The faster the change will happen, and that resonance will continue to grow. So thank you. And can you tell the listeners how to stay in touch with you and what are your current offerings?
Oh, thank you, April. It's been such an honor to be here and also to hear more about your medicine because I've been following you for some time and I just love the work you do. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So where you can find me, Instagram is probably the easiest at This is Kate Murphy. and my website. This is katemurphy.com. In terms of offerings, I have lots of free offerings, so don't hesitate to go take advantage of all of it. And I host in the fall the Feminine Code Priestess School, which we open into the sacred spiral, is the first journey of a priestess journey, if that feels called for you. And that's a 1-year container. And I also run the Feminine Code Business School every spring. And so we just wrapped up this year's, but every year I open the doors again. And that's where we dive into the feminine of business and weave the feminine and masculine together to really find that unity point. So that's the best way to work with me other than mentorships. So thank you.
Those are wonderful offerings. And definitely scroll down to the bottom of the show notes, and I will have a link to Kate's offerings and those free downloads. The Will of the Year is such a gift, and all the other ones too. So thank you so much. And definitely share this episode if you know you have any beautiful friends, women friends, which I know you do. Share this episode with them so they can step into their power and energy, priestess, medicine, woman, healing energy, which I feel like probably a lot of the listeners, you listening now, you embody that energy, and you're being called right now because we need the earth protectors. We need that divine feminine energy. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to share before we go?
One more thing, very simply, is that as we rise the divine feminine, it is so important to meet the divine masculine with it so that we find that beautiful unity point. And the only way that can happen is for the divine feminine to rise so that there is the meeting point that can happen. I really just appreciate you making that call for women to step into what they feel called to do and rise into. It's so needed and so important. So thank you.
That is beautiful. I'm glad you shared that. Yes, we need that union of the feminine and the masculine, because right now we own too much masculine. So thank you. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Kate. It was such a pleasure having you on the show. I know you enjoyed that podcast episode with Kate Murphy as much as I did. And I hope that you can connect with the divine feminine, maybe do the Rosemary hand washing, connect with all the beauty around you right now, everything that is flowering and growing, all the abundance. Make sure you get outside. I'm sending you lots of love. And if you want to learn wild herbs, the in-season membership is open right now. Before you leave, make sure you scroll down to the bottom of the show notes and get some of those free goodies from Kate Murphy. You will love them, and it will help you dive deeper into the divine feminine. All right, until the next Wild Herb podcast, be well.